Good evening, folks, or good afternoon. It depends what side of the world you're in. And I'm Marc Ryo, live from France. Freedom UFOs and myself will present to you tonight a lady from the UK, from Great Britain, that I've known and interviewed before, and that who has interviewed me as well. This is the second session, or the second show. She's gonna talk to us about her support group for experiencers and abductees and contactees and anomalous cases in the UK. And I'll welcome Joanne Summerscales from the Ammach right now, and she's going to introduce herself. Go ahead, Joanne.
Hello, Mark. Hello, everybody there. And hello here from the UK. A rather damp, wet UK, but hello, everybody.
So you've been handling this support group, the Ammach, for about what, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah. Yes. If you want me to give you a little bit of an overview, I can, Mark. Ammach has been going since January 23rd, 2011. So I can't believe it. It's actually coming up to nearly 5 years. And it was really, it's called the Ammach Project, and it was really developed to provide a platform in the UK. We don't really have much here to offer a safe platform for experiences of whatever kind, that is abductees, contactees, also people, sometimes TIs, people suffering from mind control issues, because Ammach actually stands for, it's an anagram, and it stands for anomalous mind management. So that's kind of the mind control element. Abductee, contactee helpline. And it's a project, so it's known as the Ammach Project. And what I've been doing is many people, although it's a UK founded project, it's actually attracted people from all over the world, which was a big surprise to me. I really didn't expect that, and a lot of people from America as well as Canada, Australia, and really far afield. So that was very interesting. Anyway, over the years, the cases have been astonishing, and what clearly is the case is that humanity is being interacted with, impacted by, association with others, and these others are various, on planet, off planet, dimensional, interdimensional, and physical. Right, so right. Yeah.
Project Unlock. It's a new network, and it's catching on pretty well. And this is my second show only with the network, and I'm really glad to have you on. You mentioned the mind control issue. Have you heard of the Tavistock Institute in London that's been around since the 1920s?
Sure I have. And places like Porton Down as well, who experimented infamously on unconsenting, unsuspecting soldiers. Yes, so I am aware. And it's interesting because I have also, my background involves media as well as therapeutic elements. Initially, before I really began in this field, my passion, because I had disability in my family, and I was very interested in human consciousness, in humanity, and what we're all doing here, and what it means to be human. Anyway, because of all of that, and because of my family's disability issue, I began researching sort of consciousness, spirituality, and I began meeting people, fabulous people who are still in my life today, some of them, who came on partway on that journey with me, and I did various different modalities. I mean, essentially what I do now is a distillation of all the work that I've done over the years, and I would say it's quantum field healing, because that's exactly what we do, or what I do. And I do full immersion sessions, and what I mean by that is people can come and do a residential with me, spend 2-3 days or longer if there's a really chronic case. Or I can do Skype one-to-one, which is also really effective, and of course face-to-face for general ones, and it's basically looking at the points of inception, the genesis of whatever issues have been anchoring in the field, and then clearing those, bringing those back into balance. And it's very interesting because some of those can be ET related, they can be different programmings and stuff from previous lives. It's a very big web of where these blocks and issues can be drawn from, and also one's predisposition psychologically and genetically also can factor in. So I've worked with quite a lot of people, a lot of experiences, as well as people who've had mind control issues without even an ET element to it, and that was very interesting because I wasn't sure if I could address that. In fact, we addressed it extremely well. So the therapeutic element also means that I am deeply interested in the wellness of experiences. Are they well? If they're not, why not? A lot of experiences are not experiencing the best of health, and so I've also been researching, and I'm about to start another book with Hilary Porter, who's a lifelong abductee. Fascinating case, and we're looking at doing a quick reference, a manual self-help guide for helping experiencers with issues that they've been going through, and that will hopefully be, I don't know, start in the next few weeks. But yes,
when you mentioned the best help,
I'm sorry, Marco. Just repeat.
When you're mentioning health, actually,
yes.
I can hear myself back. You mean for the abductees
yes.
side of the equation, or the contactees as well, or
yes, everybody, anybody and everybody. Yeah, right. Health. You know, if we're not well, whoever we are, whatever's going on for us, if we're not well, we don't function. We can't. It's not easy for us. We get distracted by our health conditions. Of course, we do, and so. And it keeps us from information sometimes about ourselves, although the issue, whatever we've got, can also be informative for us. So,
right.
You know.
And the health issues are coming from the experiences themselves, or the entities, or the maybe the.
You know what, Marco? I hadn't even ever thought about an entity having a health issue. That's a really great one. Well, I haven't come across any entity that's been that's interacted with me who might have a health issue, but certainly loads of experiences have health issues. Yeah, they do. Yeah, and they are varied and many.
And you don't think it's the interaction that creates or causes the health issue, or because there are major differences between starseeds and abductees or contactees.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Listen, it doesn't really matter what label we put on anything. If you're not feeling well, whatever label you come in with, starseed, abductee, contactee, human being, entity, if you're not feeling well, that just impacts you. So, we can we don't need to get lost in the semantics of who we are, in our orientation as a being, male, female, entity, otherwise. We just need someone to hear us and to perhaps help coach us through, hopefully, to the other side, to wellness.
Right. What I wanted to point out is basically the different types of entities and star beings or aliens that are interacting with those experiencers, and some are cooperating with the military, like
yes,
my lab.
Absolutely.
Maybe you may want to tell us about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, Marco, because I've been working with Bill Brooks, He's actually a lifelong experiencer. He's an ex-soldier, and we've just actually got his book to the publishers this week. And we've spent 3 years writing it. And one of the reasons why it's been so long is because he was so poorly by some of the revelations that the process of writing the book caused that he would often have to take a break. And for sometimes several weeks whilst he got back to balance, because one of the things, for example, it corroborated what he'd been talking about, because again, just as a sideline, one of the things that the debunkers always harp on about is evidence, 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 and it's very difficult when it's experiential. It's like we can say love. How do you provide evidence of love? Is it a hug? Is it a look? How do we provide hard evidence of that? So, the experiencers also have that to deal with, and a lot of isolation. So, because of that isolation and because of other issues, I really wanted to kind of be there for them and provide a platform, and also extend out and talk to others about other information and things that might come forward to help. But back to Bill Brooks. I did send you an image of the book cover, which you might want to have a look at sometime, or show your viewers, just so they can see what it looks like. But basically, what happened with Bill was that the book's called 44, and the reason it is called 44, I am getting to the point 1 second, is that he had a download at 44 years old, and during that download, which really you could categorize it as it's like a near-death experience. I was trying to find if there was another way to express it, but there really isn't. So if people are familiar with the concept of a near-death experience and what happens then, this is really what happened to Bill when he was 44. He's in his mid-60s now, and except he didn't have any life-threatening event going on. It was simply that he had this download, saw his entire life pass before him, and he saw everything, and I mean everything. That was the abductions, all the anomalous things that had happened in his life, he saw during that download. Now, when Bill is a man who, prior to 44, would think people like you and I, in his words, were complete nutcases. Now, it's wonderful that he has now, seen the other side of the fence. So what he says to me also is, it's interesting, Joanne, because I also understand the naysayers, because I was one. But now, after this 44-year-old event, what one of those major memories was that came back was an event. He joined the army in 1968. In 1968, he was stationed in Sennelager, Germany. And how about this, guys? Isn't this a fascinating thing? Bill was stationed at one of only 2 nuclear bases on the planet at that time. And guess what? That base was actually co-shared with Area 51 personnel, because the Honest John rockets, nuclear missiles that they had, needed the technicians there to ensure that their every 3-year testing went ahead without too much difficulty. So they were not allowed to interact with the Americans. Now, when I say this is very interesting, no one had really heard of Area 51 back in 1968.
Right.
So, and he knew it was Area 51 because another soldier had told him that. So that wasn't something that came with the download. He was actually given that information during his time there. He didn't know what Area 51 was. He didn't know what it meant. He does now.
Right,
so
right.
What happened to him within the first, I think it's the first 2 weeks, he experienced 2 major abductions, clearly with collusion by the military. And when I say that, how about this for collusion? All right, this was absolutely overt. So what happened on this occasion, if you're happy for me to tell this part of the story, Mark,
Absolutely, absolutely.
was that so he was new, and so he didn't really, you have to understand also as a new soldier, he didn't know what protocols were normal and what was unusual in the army. He still had to learn all that.
Mm-hmm.
So here he is, he's on guard duty on a little exercise with a friend, and normally it's a 2-hour off, 2-hour on event. So they weren't relieved at 2 hours, and so it was a nice evening, and they thought, you know what, we won't go back just yet because, hey, if we do, we might be put to work. So they lit up another cigarette and had another chat and sat with their weapons, though they had no ammunition for their weapons, but it was an exercise. And then they noticed an orange mist rolling in toward them. Now, what they immediately thought was, oh, it's a gas attack. We better let the gang know. This is obviously part of the exercise. So off they went to the NCO and informed him that there was a gas attack and that the guys needed to get their gas masks on. And he said, well, I don't know what you're talking about because we've been stood down, which means the exercise was finished, but no one had told them. So I don't know what happened with the orange mist at that point, actually. I think it had dissipated. But anyway, so what happened next was that the guys were told just to go to their beds. It was sort of, I don't know, latish in the evening, although it was a summer's evening, so still a little bit light. And so the only location available to them was the top of a Saracen vehicle. Mm-hmm. And it had a lot of Hessian netting and cam nets. And they thought that looked comfortable, so up there they went and were about to bed down before another cigarette, and they suddenly saw a whole load of lights in front of them, and they looked like these lights were being parachuted in. It looked very strange, and there was some orange colouring to them, and they thought, gosh, what the heck's that? And they thought, oh, it must be the paras.
Kind of
the
right?
paras, the paratroopers.
Either, you know, it's there's a whole bunch of people actually studying crop circles as well in the UK, and not for just tourism reasons. I have a couple questions to maybe close this up here, because it's we've been on for a while, but you know, you have so many things to say. We haven't covered all the fields that you know we intended to cover. But how do experiencers manage the growing mind control of technology today? Do you have any feedback from them, from the field, or you know, the experiencers' cases that you're studying?
So
did you hear me? Oh.
Continue.
Oh.
Okay, I lost you. I lost you there, Mark, for a moment. Can
okay.
you just repeat the question?
Sure, I'll repeat the question. Basically, how do experiencers manage the growing mind control of technology today? You know, with the AI, the artificial intelligence, and all those devices that, you know, just throw magnetic waves or electromagnetic fields at them, or download stuff in their minds, or you know, it's good for everyone. Experiences that too, but I mean, experiencers are being more sensitive, more open, maybe to those waves. Do you have any feedback from them regarding the mind control? You know, technological mind control.
I really can't really speak to how they all deal with it. Mm-hmm. I really don't know that because I haven't asked them all how they deal with it. Working therapeutically, I had. I mean, I've worked with one particular mind control case where there wasn't any ET involvement at all, but it was a very, very serious case of a young lady in the UK whose mother was absolutely terrified she was losing her daughter. Her daughter had stopped eating and drinking. She was sort of late 20s. This is a couple of years ago. I worked with her. And they were desperate. There was just no one else to go to who could perhaps countenance the kind of thing that they were had been experiencing. And basically, this is a very strange case, and I mention it, although it's not an ET thing, but just for people to be aware. She had got involved. This young lady was extremely conscious of health and wellness, of going on the path of organics and you know, all of that kind of mental attitude and processing. Really good person. And then she had gone onto a website where there was a person whose name just escapes me at the moment, and basically using NLP. Now, I know NLP can be used for good, but it can also be used for mind control. And somehow this young lady got ensnared to the point where she sold everything she had in the UK. It was like she was hypnotized. And she actually, this guy was in America. She went to America where she was basically kept prisoner, raped, abused, and she did escape. And when she came back to the UK, she was a complete wreck. And I do believe that had I not been able to work with her, that she would have had to go down the psychiatric route and would have probably ended up institutionalized. This is really serious stuff. And we broke the programming in the first session. Basically, these bullies, these nefarious, you know, psychopaths who think that they can control a divine human, you know, has got another thing coming. Unfortunately, not everybody has tools with which they can work with or have knowledge that they can even be free of this stuff. So it doesn't take a lot. It takes awareness that you are sovereign and demanding that you are sovereign of yourself and of everything around you in your own divine energy. And when I say divine, I'm talking not in any religious kind of terms at all. I'm talking about the fact that you are a creation that came from the spark of life that brought you into this world, and that is sacrosanct. I absolutely believe that. And I believe that we can reintegrate that sanctity and divinity, and we can rebuild the matrix of your divine self fairly easily. I worked with her about on 3 occasions before I relocated to a different place in the UK. And by the 3rd time, she was eating and drinking. She was beginning to get her life back, and her mother was beginning to feel that she'd got her daughter back. Unfortunately, they're a very long way away from me in the UK, but we did some fantastic work. Now, the same can be done for people with ET issues, and you know, I had a wonderful. Just reminds me, it's just popped into my mind, so I'll tell you about it. And it's I had a call from a newspaper article about Ammach some last year or something. An 85-year-old lady called me. I'll call her Millie. And she said, "Joanne, I just wanted to tell you what happened to me, and it happened 5 years ago. Now this elderly lady had been an abductee, an experiencer for nearly all her life, and it was mainly at the hands of reptilians, and it wasn't obviously, from what I understood, a great, fantastic experience. I think there are 1 or 2 positives, but you know, mainly those. Anyway, at 80 years old now, so let me tell you folks, this kind of hits it on the head that people say, well, ET aren't interested in you after your, you know, reproductive years. They certainly are. At 80 years old, this reptilian popped into her dimension, 3D world, and said words to the fact that she was his, and that you know, he'd be doing what he liked with. And Millie said, "I don't think so. I belong to Jesus." And with that, he popped out of her dimension and out of her life. Now, you know, I once had an event during part of my training as a therapist when I was exhausted, and I had an entity incursion, and I was quite new to all of this. This is back in my 20s, and I was so exhausted with the work that I'd been doing throughout my training and culminating in this one last session that I didn't have the energy to kick its backside out of my field, and I actually felt I was going to die. And I don't mean that lightly. I really felt that my life was about to be taken over by something else, and had it done that, this hostile takeover, I would have become something else. I wouldn't be Joanne Summerscales today. God knows what I would have been, but it wouldn't have been me. And the only thing that I could think to do, and I'm not religious as I say, was to scream internally, scream for the Christ energy, the divine energy, to protect me and basically kick the ass of this nefarious little thing that was trying to take over. And it worked. Mm-hmm. I have to say, my system went into shock. I was in shock for 3 days afterwards, and my system went into shock with all the usual shock things that happen to a physical body as well as the mental emotional side. Interestingly, the therapist, I don't know whether she allowed that in on purpose to try and take me out of the picture, or whether that was her ignorance, or whether she even knew. I don't know, but let me tell you, since that time, I have been absolutely on red alert for the dangers and the safety issues linked to this field. So I'm hot on that.
So you were able to connect to your higher consciousness.
I don't know, but something came in and saved me. I tell you, I was so exhausted. I was on my knees with exhaustion. I was actually lying down on the therapy couch at the time, but I had no ability, not 1 ounce of energy, mentally or emotionally, to deal with what was happening, but I knew what was happening. I was completely conscious of it, and I knew that it wasn't good.
Right. And that's exactly my next question to you was what path are you taking now? How do you see? How do you envision our reality? Our current reality unfolding. So many, huge Earth changing events and Earth events, planetary events happening. So much truth coming out, and the veils of illusions seems to crumble and fall down. Do you see a big planetary change or shift? Being undertaken right now, or do you see it as the same old usual archons like reality, pursuing its path of control of the cattle control, basically, and a little caste of elite still controlling the planet and using us as slaves, or are we going to move to a higher consciousness?
I think we are already moving, Mark. I know it doesn't feel like it, and sometimes I have days when I honestly think, what, it's not happening. I'm fed up. I really don't want to be on this planet. I've had enough. I'm out of here. I'm not sure how I'm out of here, but then I will hear from people, and I have a lot of amazing people around me who are, a really high caliber spiritually and in awareness. And people like the biolocation team. I mean, it's clear that there is something going on energetically, but it's very difficult to get to extricate yourself from all these different scenarios and stories without ending up in some confusion and distress, because and I get very distressed seeing what's happening with the animals and the people, and my God, it is almost unconscionable and unbearable. And the only way I can bear it is to stand in my own spiritual power and sovereignty, and to reaffirm that all is well within the stream that I'm living, and that vibration and energy will move forward and attract the greater good, along with all of you guys doing the same thing. And I don't mean I spend hours doing this. I don't. I may just give it a moment's note whilst I'm about my busy day or about having a rest. But I think that's what we have to do. The thing is that they seek to confuse us. They do a great job of that. So what we need to do is communication and letting each other know that we're there for one another. Whether we communicate very much at all, Marco, it doesn't matter, but the quality of our communication and the open-heartedness, that is what is really important. Let's not try to over-intellectualize things either. We do need critical thinking skills. We do need to bring the mind to bear, but we need to bring it tempered by the heart. And if we don't do that, we will get, really lost. because we have to bring, the heart has been squashed, it's been trodden on and trampled, and we need to bring the heart energy out, and that needs to lead, and the mind needs to come on board with the heart, not the other way around. And I think that if we can do that, and I mean, I know this sounds very simplistic, but, you know, I don't know how to stop Cameron or Obama or the other amazingly psychopathic individuals from harming the peoples of the world, except by communicating, by reaffirming and establishing my own sovereignty and light, and by encouraging others to do that, and to encourage others to be autonomous in their own healing. You know, in my therapy work, I give people the tools to work with also, that people are empowered to come out of the trauma. Now, we all need help and support. We absolutely all do, and I think that it's okay that we ask one another for help. And I think that we should do that without, you know, without difficulty.
And also teach people to let go of the fear, leave the fear behind us, basically. Do you think experiencers or starseeds can show us the way to a higher consciousness, or I mean, at least the ones who are you know, done or through with the fear of trauma or the trauma-based experiences? Where do you draw the line between, you know, between free will, the spiritual contract that's being shown to many experiencers, even though the ones who have very negative experiences or traumatic or hostile experiences? Is the free will of those experiencers really respected? What do you think?
Well, listen. You know, lots of people experience. I'm not an experiencer. I've had a recent interesting experience, but I'm not an experiencer. So, you know, I can't exactly speak to that. I can only speak around it. And what I would say around that, you know, I'm supporting people at the moment therapeutically as well. And, you know, in speaking. Okay, so what I will say is also, one of the things is, so many experiences, whatever they're going through, have been so isolated that in itself is traumatic. So once we start sharing with one another, of course you have to find the right people to share with. You know, sharing with some people can cause more isolation, and you don't want that. So, you know, that's why I set up Ammach, so people would have a safe space, a friendly, unjudgmental platform with which to tell their story. Now, a lot of the stories, that's just what they needed. That has been their healing. You know, when just to go back to a couple of years ago, or 2.5 years ago, when there was a documentary made about Ammach, or we can call it a mockumentary, because clearly once it got into the hands of a major television channel, they made sure that there was misinformation, disinformation, and it was called Confessions of an Alien Abductee. That tells you everything. In the initial days, I agreed to doing the program because the initial people who contacted me were wonderful, and I do believe they're still wonderful. But they got their first ever commission with a major TV company, who were the distributors and funders for the final part. And of course, then they lost control of the integrity of which they had assured me all the way along. And so it was out of my control at the end of the day. Now, I took enormous flack and vilification. My ex-colleague went about vilifying me, slandering me, and still does to this day. Several of the people I actually supported have done the same, because they saw that my facilitating their involvement was actually, you know, a setup. I mean, for goodness sake, I mean, good grief. That would be shooting myself in the foot. But what I wanted to say about that is that, so never mind, you know, I had from that over 300 emails within a month saying, you know, we know that was, you know, you were set up. We know that wasn't the real thing. We know that wasn't how you wanted it. Of course, it wasn't. But people could see through. They're able to see through. This is what's happening now. The veil is thinning. The guises are being known, and the tactics are being seen and unpicked. And bar one person who said I was a complete nutter. Good for them. The rest, the 299 people, said, thank you very much. It's made me feel much less alone. Thank you for being the one to put your head above the parapet and take those shots. I tell you, I don't wonder my head isn't pitted. So the reason I'm telling you that is because there is a greater awareness now. There's a greater sense of empowerment. Now, you know, some of the experiences have been through such trauma, not all of them, but the ones I'm dealing with have, you know, well, not all have, but a lot of them have, and that's what I can support them with. Once we can get into some kind of harmonization of the energy that's around them that's been caused by the trauma, they can be much more centered in their own autonomous, sovereign self, divine self if you want, and can be much more informed about what it is that they've been going through. So I don't know about line drawn and contracts and all that. You know, you know, we are sovereign beings, and that's the end of it. You can undo a contract. You intended. And that's what I say. So nobody is bound by anything they don't want to be bound by. Now, I know that sounds a very strong statement, and it is hard. You know, sometimes if there has been a generational thing, or you've come in to have experiences because you've agreed to help another species, you know, that's different. There are people who have positive experiences and are happy to interact with these others. Consciously, unconsciously, the people I'm working with specifically, so I don't work with those people specifically because they're okay, but the people who come to me need a voice, they need some support. You know, I had a lady who for 18 months wouldn't speak to me but wearing a mask and I mean, it sounds a funny thing to say, but she was so frightened for her life and her family's life because she had been, I'm wearing some orgonite tonight, and she said that in an email to another friend a little while back, a couple of years back, that she had wanted to organite the UK. And by organiting the UK, she thought that's why she wanted everybody to have some orgonite. And by that, that would dispel and disperse the negative entity. It would loosen their foothold. Because what she discovered is that orgonite was an amazing material for interrupting the access that ET had, negative, I'm talking about those. And anyway, so since she wrote the email, she became a targeted individual. She was having helicopters over her home. She was, this is a lady I've interviewed called Samantha McDonald, and she was being surveilled by police cars. Oh, I mean, unbelievable things she went through. Finally, after a year and a half or maybe a bit more of speaking to her, and then she did the interview with me. She actually came on television with me, on a you know, a morning television breakfast show, just to you know, wow. And you know what I said to her? I said, how do you feel? And she said, I feel like I'm treading on the tail of a tiger. You know, that she finally came forward and had that incredible courage and bravery. I just think, you know, all you guys out there who are experiencers, you are amazing, and thank you for sharing, because it's fantastic. And you know, when we finished the program, I just said to her, okay, so how does it feel to be standing on the tail of that tiger? And she said, you know what, free. And that's what this is about. And I think we're done. I think we're well over your time. My goodness. Thank you very much.
Yeah, freedom and the Experiencers Liberation Day. You've come up
I
with
like
that
sound.
What do you think of this? Well, this whole tactic strategy of the mainstream media, I'm sure connected to the lobbies and the MIAC, you know, the military-industrial complex. Sometimes, you know, they like to hide from people the existence, the presence of ETs among us and the interaction with ETs. So they, you know, they go in and try to discredit your documentary or ridicule it and so forth. And other times they want to expose it or manage and handle the disclosure on their agenda, you know, on their clock. And that's the danger. Don't you think there's been like a two-sided disclosure program who wants to discredit all the efforts put forward to expose the interaction and the obvious presence of ETs in our cosmos and in the dimensions and among us, and and don't you think there's a two-sided attitude from those guys running the show?
Yes, there is. There is, Marco, and you know that's just par for the course, and we're wise to them now. So you know it's just for us to be a little bit discerning, to open our heart. You know, keep the heart open. That's what we have to do, guys. And you know, talk to people. You know, ask if you're not sure, and also you know, go with your gut feeling. And I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers. Nobody has all the answers. The experiences don't. They may have a whole different raft of information to me, and I want to hear about that. I want to learn about that. I want to learn what our role is as a galactic citizen, because I know that's where we're heading next, and that can be really soon. And I'm really, you know, grateful to be part of this, no matter how difficult it is for me to keep going myself. And you know, I do think, just a very short answer, I do think there is a developed spiritual awareness burgeoning, moving through us, and you know, there could be a tipping point where something happens and you know, their critical mass kicks in, or we could just be a little bit longer yet. But you know, it's all a journey. Sometimes days are hard, and sometimes it's joyful and wonderful, and that's just the human condition.
We're getting closer to the light at the end of the tunnel, I think. You know, beyond.
I think so, and I'd just like to thank you, Marco, for the opportunity to share. You know, I hope I haven't talked your ears off. Once I get started.
No, it was really fascinating, and we were really glad to have you. And,
okay, well, you know, we can speak again, and there's so much more I can share with you guys if you like on another occasion, and we can choose our subjects so we can, you know, go specifically, and I'll have a lot more to say about the bilocation work and what we've been doing at the workshop, etc. So thank you very much. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Kerry and the gang, wherever you are around the planet.
And we'll put up your website address on the podcast.
Yeah, that's just www.amash at amash.co.uk. And if anybody wants to call me in the UK, it's amash@hotmail.co.uk.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, take care. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye. I'll see you guys next month. We don't have a date yet and a guest, but I was glad to be with you tonight or today or this afternoon or wherever you are worldwide. And I'll see you next month from France. Bye-bye. Manage and handle the disclosure on their agenda, you know, on their clock, and that's the danger. Don't you think there's been like a two-sided disclosure program? One to discredit all the efforts put forward to expose the interaction and the obvious presence of ETs in our cosmos and in the dimensions and among us, and don't you think there's a two-sided attitude from those guys running the show?
Yes, there is. There is, Marco, and you know that's just par for the course, and we're wise to them now. So you know it's just for us to be a little bit discerning, to open our heart. You know, keep the heart open. That's what we have to do, guys. And you know, talk to people. You know, ask if you're not sure, and also you know, go with your gut feeling. And I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers. Nobody has all the answers. The experiences don't. They may have a whole different raft of information to me, and I want to hear about that. I want to learn about that. I want to learn what our role is as a galactic citizen, because I know that's where we're heading next, and that can be really soon. And I'm really, you know, grateful to be part of this, no matter how difficult it is for me to keep going myself. And you know, I do think, just a very short answer, I do think there is a developed spiritual awareness burgeoning, moving through us, and you know, there could be a tipping point where something happens and you know, the critical mass kicks in, or we could just be a little bit longer yet. But, you know, it's all a journey. Sometimes days are hard, and sometimes it's joyful and wonderful, and that's just the human condition.
We're getting closer to the light at the end of the tunnel, I think, you know, beyond.
I think so. And I'd just like to thank you, Marco, for the opportunity to share. You know,
so
I
much,
hope
Joanne.
I haven't talked your ears off
really
once I get
great.
started.
No, it was really fascinating, and we were really glad to have you. And,
okay, well, you know, we can speak again, and there's so much more I can share with you guys if you like on another occasion, and we can choose our subjects so we can, you know, go specifically, and I'll have a lot more to say about the bilocation work and what we've been doing at the workshop, etc. So thank you very much. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Kerry, and the gang, wherever you are around the planet.
And we'll put up your website address on the podcast.
Yeah, that's just www.amash@hotmail.co.uk. And if anybody wants to call me in the UK, it's amash@hotmail.co.uk.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, take care. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye. I'll see you guys next month. We don't have a date yet and a guest, but I was glad to be with you tonight or today or this afternoon or wherever you are worldwide. And I'll see you next month from France. Bye-bye.